The story of Jonathan in the Bible is an incredible example of friendship, courage, and loyalty. He was the son of King Saul and the heir to the throne of Israel, but he chose to give up all of this to support and protect his friend David, who would become the future king. Jonathan was not only a brave warrior, but also a friend who placed loyalty above his own interests. It is surprising to think how someone in his position could love and help a friend whom many would consider a rival. Moreover, Jonathan had to face the difficult challenge of being faithful to his father, King Saul, who was jealous and unpredictable, while at the same time standing by David's side. Get ready to learn about this story that teaches us the true value of friendship, sacrifice, and trust in God's plans, even when they seem contrary to our expectations. Jonathan was the son of King Saul and a prince of Israel, known in the Bible for his special friendship with David. This friendship was marked by impressive loyalty and a great sense of dedication. Even as the son of the king who pursued David relentlessly, Jonathan chose to support his friend, protecting him and helping him whenever he needed it. He leaves us an example of true friendship and courage, even in very difficult situations. The name Jonathan means gift of God and reflects how he was a blessing to Israel. As Saul's eldest son, he was the natural heir to the throne of Israel. His mother was likely Ahinoam, and Jonathan was part of a large family with several brothers: Abinadab, Malchishua, Ishbosheth, Merab, and Michal, the latter of whom later became David's wife. Jonathan also had two brothers, Armoni and Mephibosheth, sons of one of Saul's concubines. His friendship with David becomes even more special when we think about the family and political environment in which he lived. As a prince, Jonathan could have seen David as a threat to the throne that was rightfully his, but instead he chose friendship, setting aside rivalry and trusting in God's plans. This demonstrates his humility and character. Jonathan's relationship with David is even more remarkable considering the issues within his family. His father, King Saul, was unpredictable and over time developed a strong paranoia against David, treating him as an enemy. Even so, Jonathan managed to be loyal to both his father and his friend. He worked hard to protect David while respecting his position as a son and prince. His story is a great example of love, faith, and sacrifice, even in complicated situations. Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, who was only 5 years old when Jonathan died. Mephibosheth had a physical disability and was raised in the city of Lodebar. Later, David, fulfilling the promise he made to Jonathan, restored to Mephibosheth the lands that belonged to Saul and welcomed him into the court of Israel, giving him a special place. Jonathan was also known as a brave warrior. After Saul's victory against the Ammonites, the army of Israel was divided into two groups, and Jonathan was tasked with leading one of them. The Bible recounts that he was victorious in Geba, where he defeated the local Philistine leader. In chapter 14 of 1 Samuel, his courage and military skill are highlighted. One of his most impressive actions occurred when, along with his armor-bearer, he single-handedly defeated an entire garrison of Philistine soldiers, showcasing his bravery and trust in God. In a difficult moment, Jonathan was nearly killed by his own father, Saul. Unknowingly, he broke a fasting order that Saul had given to the people. However, the Israelites defended Jonathan and prevented Saul from harming him. This episode made it clear that the true problem in Israel was not Jonathan, but rather Saul's impulsive actions. Jonathan was a talented warrior, and this was evident even in David's lament after Jonathan's death. The Bible highlights Jonathan's exemplary character. He was courageous, made wise decisions, and inspired the soldiers of Israel. Furthermore, he had the skill to teach war strategies, earning the respect and admiration of all. Jonathan was known for being wise and making strategic decisions based on his good character, something that contrasted greatly with the impulsive and unpredictable actions of his father, Saul. He often tried to mediate between Saul and David, helping to ease the tension between them. Despite facing many challenges, Jonathan managed to maintain his loyalty both to David and to his father, staying by Saul's side until the day they both died. The most remarkable aspect of Jonathan's life was his friendship with David. The relationship between them was so strong and genuine that Jonathan cared for David as if he were himself. After David defeated Goliath, the two made a pact of friendship. In a symbolic and meaningful gesture, Jonathan gave David his princely robe and armor, as recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 18. When the conflict between David and Saul became very severe, Jonathan tried to bring peace between the two, even while enduring pressure from his father to betray his best friend. He was the one who warned David that Saul's anger would not subside, helping him escape danger. Jonathan also understood that David was God's chosen one to be the next king of Israel. Although he was the natural heir to the throne, Jonathan demonstrated his true friendship by supporting David without self-interest. A special moment in their friendship is recorded in the Bible. Jonathan, son of Saul, went to David in the forest and strengthened his trust in God. He said, "Do not be afraid, for Saul, my father, will not find you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be at your side. Even my father knows this." This meeting happened when David was fleeing to save his life. Even as the son of the king, Jonathan had the courage to go to David's hiding place. He not only encouraged him, but also reminded him of God's promises, reaffirming that David would be king despite the difficulties. In addition to encouraging David, Jonathan did something even more special. He and David renewed their promise to take care of each other and protect their families in the future. This pact showed that their friendship was sincere and went beyond any hardship. Jonathan also declared that when David became king, he would stand by his side as a faithful helper. This gesture was full of humility and love because Jonathan, as a prince, was the natural heir to the throne. Even so, he accepted that God had chosen David and supported this decision wholeheartedly. This moment between Jonathan and David is a great example of true friendship, loyalty, and trust in God. Jonathan set aside his position as heir to follow God's plan and demonstrate his love and faithfulness to his friend. Unfortunately, Jonathan did not live to fulfill his promise to stand by David's side when he became king. He died tragically along with his father, King Saul, and his brothers during a battle against the Philistines. This story is recorded in chapter 31 of 1 Samuel. The Philistines fought against Israel, and the Israelites fled, falling dead on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines pursued Saul and his sons and killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, sons of Saul. The battle on Mount Gilboa was one of the most difficult moments for Israel. The Philistines, powerful enemies, attacked with full force, causing a great defeat. Many Israelite soldiers died and the army was scattered. Saul and his sons ended up surrounded, becoming the primary targets of the Philistines during the fight. Jonathan, known for his bravery, probably fought with all his strength alongside his father and brothers to defend Israel. However, the Philistine army was very strong, and he was ultimately killed along with Abinadab and Malchishua. Jonathan's death marked not only a great loss for Israel, but also the end of Saul's leadership, plunging the people into sorrow. After the battle, the Philistines not only celebrated their victory, but also humiliated their enemies. They took the bodies of Saul and his sons and hung them on the wall of the city of Beth-shan. This was a common practice at the time to demonstrate power and spread fear among conquered peoples. Saul's body was displayed as a symbol of Israel's defeat, and the bodies of Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua suffered the same fate. It was a cruel act, meant to strip any remaining honor from Saul's family. However, the story took a different turn thanks to the courage and gratitude of the residents of Jabesh Gilead. This city owed a debt to Saul because at the beginning of his reign, he saved them from an Ammonite attack, 1 Samuel chapter 11. Remembering this act and wishing to honor the former king, the men of Jabesh Gilead undertook a risky nighttime mission. They crossed Philistine territory, facing many dangers, and retrieved the bodies of Saul and his sons, which were hanging on the wall of Beth-shan. After bringing the bodies back, the residents of Jabesh Gilead buried them respectfully in their city under a grove of trees, a special place symbolizing honor and rest. This gesture restored dignity to the royal family and demonstrated that even in difficult times, loyalty and gratitude could still prevail. The residents of Jabesh Gilead fasted for 7 days as a sign of mourning for the death of Saul and his sons. This act showed how deeply their loss was felt, not only by the kingdom, but also by those who had benefited from Saul's leadership. It was a rare moment of respect and humanity in a period filled with conflict and violence, highlighting the importance of memory and honor even in the face of tragedy. When David received the news of Jonathan and Saul's death, he was deeply grieved. The information was brought by an Amalekite who claimed to have found Saul wounded on the battlefield and, at the king's request, ended his life. However, this version is controversial, as the Bible states that Saul took his own life upon realizing he would be captured by the Philistines. Regardless, the news had a devastating impact on David. In 2 Samuel chapter 1, David expresses his sorrow in one of the most heartfelt laments in the Bible. He wept for Jonathan, his closest friend, and also for Saul, the anointed king of Israel, despite the conflicts they had. His words reflect not only his sadness over their loss, but also the respect he still held for Saul and his admiration for Jonathan's bravery. David said, "How the mighty have fallen in battle! Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, my brother Jonathan. You brought me so much joy. Your love for me was more wonderful than the love of women." 2 Samuel chapter 1 verses 25 and 26. These words reveal the deep emotional and spiritual bond between David and Jonathan. Even in the midst of mourning, David did not forget the promise he had made to Jonathan to care for his family. Years later, as king of Israel, David sought to find out if anyone from Saul's family was still alive. It was then that he discovered Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, who had been crippled since childhood. Mephibosheth lived in Lodebar, a distant and simple region, likely living humbly and in fear of being persecuted for being a descendant of Saul. If you want to know more about the story of Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, and how he became crippled, I will leave the information at the end of this video. David, instead of acting as many might have expected, took a surprising approach. He not only spared Mephibosheth's life, but also honored him in a special way. David restored to Mephibosheth all the lands that belonged to Saul and invited him to live in the palace, eating at the king's table. This gesture was not only an act of kindness, but also a testament to David's loyalty to the promise he had made to Jonathan years earlier. David's actions were remarkable because instead of eliminating Saul's descendants to consolidate his power, as was common at the time, he chose compassion and justice. He treated Mephibosheth with respect and dignity, restoring honor to the family of his dear friend Jonathan. This episode highlights not only David's loyalty, but also his vision of leadership based on mercy and commitment to God and others. Ultimately, the story of Jonathan is much more than a tale of friendship. It teaches us how to be true friends and how we can reflect God's love and faithfulness in our relationships. Jonathan showed, through his actions, that true friendship is not based on interests or advantages, but on trust, respect, and a sincere commitment to care for one another. Jonathan was the crown prince of Israel, but even so, he did not see David as an enemy or rival, even knowing that God had chosen David as the next king. Instead, He accepted God's will with humility and decided to support David in every way. He was able to place God's plans above his own interests, demonstrating a selfless and faith-filled heart. One of Jonathan's greatest demonstrations of friendship was his protection of David. He knew that Saul, his father, wanted to kill David, and he risked his own life to warn him and help him escape. Jonathan did this with courage and intelligence, devising detailed plans to protect his friend. This teaches us that being a true friend means standing by the other person, even in difficult moments, and doing whatever is necessary to help them. Today, Jonathan's story challenges us to reflect on our friendships and ask, are we being loyal, generous, and sincere friends? In a world where many relationships are shallow and interest-based, Jonathan reminds us that true friendship is deep, built on trust, respect, and the desire to do good for the other without expecting anything in return. His story inspires us to be friends who help, who encourage in difficult times, who celebrate the other's achievements without envy, and who remain loyal even when things get complicated. Just as Jonathan gave up the throne to support David, we are called to put the needs of others above our own desires, reflecting God's love in our actions. Jonathan's life teaches us that true friendship is faithful, selfless, and full of grace. May we learn from him how to build relationships that honor God and set an example of love and loyalty in a world that so desperately needs it. Now write in the comments if you already knew Jonathan's story in the Bible, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel to watch more Bible stories like this one. May God bless you.